The Galactic Concorde's outer sensor array trembled with static, then silence. It was a silence so profound that Commander Rin Vallis felt it thrum in his bones. The usual hum of the cosmos, the chatter of starbursts, the whisper of solar winds, had been abruptly smothered as if the stars themselves had held their breath. "Commander, we're losing telemetry from the Persei outpost." Lieutenant Hara's voice crackled over the comm. The data feed sputtered, showing the last recorded image. A fractured asteroid field scattered across a dead star system, twisted metal floating in the void. Rin frowned. What caused this? No signs of conquered ships. Something else. Something large. Hera's voice trembled. "Look at this." She switched the feed to a long-range scan. A shimmering distortion pulsed in the darkness, a rippling tear in the fabric of space itself, still warm with energy. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Space anomalies were common, but this was different, deliberate, violent. Then the distress beacon erupted. It was human. Not just human. The call sign, dauntless, faint but unmistakable, etched with old Earth code, buried beneath decades of galactic standard protocols. "Impossible," muttered Rin, scanning the archives. Humanity had vanished 2 centuries ago. During the carbon collapse, their homeworld scorched and silenced. No transmissions had come since. The dauntless signal flared again, distorted and warped. It wasn't a call for help, it was a warning. "Listen carefully." The distorted voice crackled through the comms, static, heavy, but resolute. "We were never meant to build ships like this. They will come. Prepare. Run." Then silence. The crew sat frozen. The Dauntless disappeared from all sensors as if swallowed by the void. Rin's fingers tightened on the console. "Prepare a squadron. We're going in." Hours later, the Concorde fleet, sleek ships from half a dozen species, approached the last known coordinates near the Sol system's outer rim. The stars seemed dimmer here, flickering like dying candles. The darkness was oppressive. Aboard the flagship Vigilant, Rin studied the star charts. The Sol system was quarantined after the collapse. No one's been allowed near, yet here we are. "Should we expect resistance?" asked Captain Myra Jen of the Vritel, her voice as cold and sharp as her species' crystalline features. Rin shook his head. "If anything, they're hiding or broken." A sudden alert flashed. Sensors detect a large vessel drifting near the gravity well of a black star. "Human design?" Myra asked, narrowing her eyes. "Affirmative." The Dauntless, the fleet slowed, tension thickening the air. As they closed the gap, the Dauntless loomed, a monstrous silhouette against the black star's eerie glow. The ship was a paradox, brutal, angular hull plating layered with kinetic armor, scarred by battles unknown. It didn't hum with energy. Like conquered ships, it seemed almost alive. Rin's breath caught. "Prepare boarding teams. We need to know what happened here." Inside the Dauntless, silence reigned. The corridors were dim, lit by flickering emergency lights. Walls were scarred by battle, but no signs of crew. Only the low mechanical whir of androids, synthetic sentinels still on patrol, but broken, their movements erratic. Lieutenant Hera's voice came over the comm, tense but curious. "Commander, life signs are faint, almost gone." Rin frowned. "Scan for logs. Anything to explain the warning." They found the bridge, an eerie relic of human ingenuity. Consoles flickered to life, displaying fragmented messages. "We unleashed what we were never meant to control. The equation too volatile. If you find this, run, before it finds you." Before they could investigate further, alarms blared. The Dauntless shuddered violently, as if alive, tearing at the fabric of reality itself. "Commander, the ship is activating," Hera shouted. "Systems are powering up without crew input." Rin barely had time to order the evacuation before the ship lurched violently. The walls warped, stars outside stretching and twisting as the Dauntless slipped through a rift in space. Back on the Vigilant, The fleet watched helplessly as the human ship vanished, carrying the boarding team with it. The bridge was thick with silence. Captain Myra's eyes met Rin's. "We just lost a team to a ghost." Rin's jaw tightened. "No. We just found out humanity never really died. And they're more dangerous than we ever imagined." Far away, across the broken silence of space, a whisper echoed in the void. Panic across the stars. The Vigilant hung at the edge of the Black Star's gravity well, its sensors desperately searching the space where the Dauntless had disappeared. Commander Rin Vallis stared at the void through the thick viewport, feeling the weight of uncertainty, pressed down like a physical force. "We lost them," Lieutenant Hera said quietly, breaking the silence. "The boarding team, the Dauntless, all gone." Rin didn't respond. His mind raced, trying to piece together the fragmented data streaming into the ship's consoles. The Dauntless had activated on its own. Its technology was alive, almost sentient, and had slipped through space by tearing reality open. This was no mere ship. It was something else entirely. "Captain Myra," Rin finally said, turning to face her. "We can't just leave it drifting, out there. If the Dauntless is still out there, it could tear through space again, destabilize nearby systems." Myra's eyes narrowed. "Then we find it. We track it down, no matter the cost." They dispatched a series of probe drones equipped with the latest quantum sensors. The drone slipped through the turbulent gravity well, skimming the event horizon of the Black Star. For hours, nothing but static answered their calls. Then one drone's feed cut back in, streaming an image that made the entire fleet's blood run cold. The Dauntless, or what was left of it, had warped into a strange, fractured dimension beyond normal space. Its hull was battered and twisted, the kinetic armor cracked and scorched. Inside the fractured reality, glowing veins of blue energy pulsed like a heartbeat through the ship's frame. "Life signs?" Rin asked, voice tight. "Minimal. Faint traces, but stable," the drone operator replied. "But the environment is unstable. We can't send a boarding party without risking collapse." The Dauntless had slipped into a pocket dimension, a liminal space between realities where the laws of physics bent and twisted. The crew was trapped somewhere inside if they were still alive. Back on the Dauntless itself, or rather inside its warped and shifting corridors, Lieutenant Eric Thane clung to the wall, his boots slipping as gravity flickered unpredictably. The boarding team had been separated in the chaos. Auric's comm was crackling with static. "Commander Vallis, do you read? We're trapped. The ship is changing around us. Walls move, time loops. This isn't normal." A soft blue glow pulsed through the hallways, lighting shadows that danced and vanished. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was alive, a vast, breathing organism fused with incomprehensible technology. Eric's eyes widened as he glimpsed movement in the distance. Androids, but unlike any they'd seen. These were ancient, their metallic forms covered in a shifting pattern of glowing sigils. They didn't speak. They watched, and then they disappeared through walls as if the boundaries between spaces were meaningless. "Keep your team together," Eric ordered, but his own voice wavered. "We don't know what this place is becoming." On the Vigilant, the mood grew, darker by the hour. Scientists and engineers pored over data from the Dauntless's recorded logs, trying to decode fragments of messages left behind. Dr. Liara Voss, an expert in xenotechnology, stared at the holographic display, her fingers trembling. The human logs. They mentioned something called the equation. They say it governs reality itself, that they rewrote it. Rin frowned. "Rewrite reality? That's impossible." Liara shook her head. "Not with this tech. Their FTL drive isn't a conventional jump or warp. It tears a hole in space-time, rides the fracture, then seals it behind. But that comes at a cost. Instability. Collapse." Myra leaned in. "Could that explain the Dauntless's current state?" "More than explain," Liara said softly. "It's a warning. They built ships that can rewrite space, but that power is unpredictable. They might have trapped themselves inside their own experiment." The Dauntless's corridors groaned, the ship flexing as if straining against an unseen force. Aric's comm crackled with a new message, faint, distorted, and chilling. We were never meant to build ships like this, a human voice whispered through the static. This power, this gift, is a curse. It fractures the mind. It fractures the soul. Aric swallowed hard, gripping the railing as the corridor twisted again. Who said that? No reply. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently and a blinding flash of light engulfed Aric. The walls around him faded, replaced by an endless void sprinkled with distant stars. For a heartbeat, he was weightless, alone, and floating between realities. Then the Dauntless snapped back, dragging him in the corridor along with it. Commander Vallis, do you copy? The ship is moving again. Rin's voice came through, steady but urgent. We're tracking it. Hold on, Lieutenant. The Dauntless burst back into normal space, but far beyond any charted star system. It was alive, moving, and more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Myra's eyes burned with determination. We have to find them, she said firmly. Whatever is happening on that ship, it's only the beginning. Rin nodded, knowing that humanity's reemergence was no accident. It was a storm on the horizon, and the Concord was standing right in its path. The Galactic Concord's archives were vast, stretching across thousands of worlds and centuries. Yet even here, in the heart of the Concord's knowledge vault, the story of humanity was shrouded in mystery and silence. For 200 years, humans had been written off as a cautionary tale, a species destroyed by their own hubris during the carbon collapse, their homeworld scorched into a barren husk. But the sudden appearance of the Dauntless shattered that assumption. Dr. Liara Voss sat in the archive chamber, flanked by Concord historians, xenolinguists, and quantum archivists. Holographic displays flickered, cycling through faded human records and recovered transmissions. The carbon collapse, Liara said, voice echoing softly, was humanity's darkest hour. A massive ecological failure triggered by runaway carbon, emissions, and systemic societal collapse. The official Concord records state the species collapsed entirely. Civilization vanished in a matter of decades. A historian shook his head. We believed the survivors died trying to rebuild on Earth, trapped by radiation and climate breakdown. But these records, Liara tapped a sequence on the display, suggest otherwise. We found encoded messages, buried deep in old communication satellites. They speak of a secret exodus program, something called the Reemergence Initiative. A xenolinguist frowned. But Earth was quarantined. No ship has crossed the quarantine zone in 2 centuries. Until now. On the Vigilant, the atmosphere was tense. Commander Rin Vallis and Captain Myra Jen stood over the latest sensor, reports. Strange signals pulsed from within Sol's system, ghost transmissions, faint and encrypted. Attempts to decode them revealed patterns unlike any known language, but unmistakably human. Rin's voice was grim. They're not just back. They've been building in secret. Myra's crystalline eyes gleamed. And they've done it alone, without the Concord's knowledge, without aid from any known species. Across the fleet, political ripples turned into waves. Half the Concord demanded immediate quarantine enforcement. Others urged diplomacy. A few whispered of preemptive strikes, but none dared ignore the truth. Humanity had not only survived, they had evolved. Deep within the archives, Liara's team uncovered startling revelations. Humans had spent generations hidden beneath Earth's surface and in massive, orbital habitats rebuilding technology in secret. The so-called Reemergence Initiative was not a military campaign but a desperate gamble. They had rewritten the very laws of physics, what they called the equation, to survive the hostile cosmos. The equation? One historian asked. Liara nodded. It's the foundation of their advanced starship technology. The Dauntless and others like it don't use traditional warp or jump drives. Instead, they manipulate space-time itself, tearing rifts and folding reality. But such power is inherently unstable. Her eyes darkened. It may explain why the Dauntless is trapped in a fractured dimension, why its crew is missing. or worse. Meanwhile, aboard the Vigilant, tensions reached a boiling point when an urgent encrypted transmission arrived from an unexpected source. "Commander Vallis," came a calm, unfamiliar voice, unmistakably human but accented with years of exile and loss. "You don't know us, we are the remnants. The ones who fled the collapse. The ones who survived the silence." Rin leaned forward, heart pounding. "Identify yourself." "We are called the Beyond, and we bring a warning. Something is coming. Something older than the stars. Something that hunts those who wield the equation." The transmission cut off, leaving a silence heavier than any vacuum. The council chambers of the Galactic Concord erupted in chaos. Species debated fiercely. The matriarch of the Vritel, a towering figure carved of crystalline facets, spoke with quiet authority. "We feared humanity's return," she said, voice ringing through the chamber. "Not because they sought conquest, but because they tampered with forces beyond comprehension. We feared what they would become. And now we fear we were right." Her gaze swept the assembly. "We must prepare, not just for their arrival, but for what follows." In the midst of this turmoil, Commander Rin found himself questioning everything he believed. Late one night, alone in his quarters, he watched the holographic stars outside his window, wondering what kind of species could survive not only extinction, but evolve technology powerful enough to rewrite reality and still carry a warning to the galaxy. "We were never meant to build ships like this," he whispered, the words from the Dauntless's logs echoing in his mind. Rin's communicator chimed. "Commander, urgent message from the Dauntless's last known coordinates." Lieutenant Hera's voice was tense. "Sensors detect faint energy signatures, signs of movement." His pulse quickened. The mystery was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning. The galaxy held its breath as humanity's ghosts stirred from their long silence, bringing with them secrets, power, and a warning that chilled the stars. Panic was spreading across the stars. The Concorde fleet was on edge. After weeks of uneasy silence, the void erupted with new horrors. Dark ships appeared without warning, emerging from the fractured rift space where the Dauntless had vanished. These vessels, sleek, black as obsidian, and unnervingly silent, moved through the stars like ghosts. The Concord had no record of their design or origin, and their presence defied every known law of space travel. Commander Rin Vallis stood on the bridge of the Vigilant, watching as one of the shadowy ships slipped past sensor arrays without triggering alarms. "They're cloaked?" Lieutenant Hara asked, disbelief in her voice. "No," Rin said slowly. "They just don't interact with our sensors the way normal matter should." Captain Myra Zhen's crystalline eyes narrowed. "They are using the same kind of space manipulation as the Dauntless, but far more advanced. They don't just travel through space, they erase themselves from it." The Ghost Fleet, as the crew had begun calling them, were an enigma wrapped in silence. They appeared near resource-rich systems, disabling defense grids with precision and harvesting materials, never firing a shot, never responding to hails. Tensions on the Vigilant rose as patrols reported skirmishes. Clashes were sudden and merciless, with entire outposts disappearing overnight. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that the Ghost Fleet was a weapon built by humans, others that it was something far older, awakened by humanity's tampering with space-time. "Commander," Lieutenant Hera reported, "we intercepted a transmission, fragments of human code but encrypted. Whoever controls these ships knows the equation intimately." Rin's jaw clenched. "Then they're linked to the humans. But who? And why are they attacking without declaring war?" In the dark hull of one Ghost Fleet vessel, a lone figure moved with deliberate purpose. It was an android, but unlike the broken sentinels found aboard the Dauntless. This one was sleek, built for infiltration and intelligence gathering, its metallic frame etched with glowing human runes pulsing softly. The android infiltrated a Concorde station, bypassing security effortlessly. Inside the command center, it scanned data cores, downloading encrypted files in seconds. A voice crackled inside its processor, an ancient human voice speaking through the centuries. The grave mind awakens. It will consume all. Prepare the I-them equation. The android's eyes flickered with blue fire. Back on the Vigilant, Commander Rin was briefed on the station's sudden blackout. They left no trace, the intelligence officer reported. No weapons fired, no ships detected. Just silence. Rin exhaled sharply. They're not just invaders, they're phantoms. Captain Myra's voice was hard as ice. Then we need to hunt ghosts with ghosts. She proposed sending a covert strike team aboard one of the captured ships to learn more. The council approved, reluctantly. The stakes were too high. The strike team boarded a derelict Ghost Fleet vessel drifting near the edge of conquered space. Inside, the corridors were cold and empty, but humming with latent power. Lieutenant Eric Thane, still haunted from his experience aboard the Dauntless, led the team. Stay sharp, he warned. These ships aren't like anything we've seen. They're alive. Suddenly, the ship shuddered, corridors warping as if the vessel itself was breathing. Then ghostly figures flickered into view, holograms of ancient human crew members, trapped between dimensions, repeating their last moments. Eric's comm buzzed. This isn't a warship, it's a prison. On the Vigilant, Dr. Liara Voss pieced together the fragments recovered by the strike team. The Ghost Fleet ships are not weapons. They're containment vessels, she explained. Humans created them to imprison something they could barely control. A hush fell over the bridge. Rin's eyes hardened. What did they imprison? And can it escape? The answer came suddenly as alarms blared across the fleet. A pulse of dark energy rippled through space, washing over the Concorde's defensive grids like a tidal wave. The Vigilant trembled violently. Status report! Captain Myra shouted. Lieutenant Hera's fingers flew over the console. Energy spikes off the charts. The Ghost Fleet is activating. Rin's heart pounded. The ghost ships were awakening from their slumber, and whatever they held captive was stirring. The galaxy's fragile peace shattered in an instant. In the darkness between stars, the true terror was waking, and humanity's warning echoed louder than ever. We were never meant to build ships like this. The Concorde fleet, reeling from the energy pulse, barely had time to respond before the black rift space twisted violently. The Vigilant shuddered as the void itself seemed to bleed. Commander Rin Vallis gripped the command rail, eyes fixed on the flickering displays showing the approaching Ghost Fleet vessels, no longer silent shadows but alive with ominous blue energy. Status! Captain Myra Zhen barked. Lieutenant Hera's voice was strained. Hull integrity at 90% but dropping fast. The energy pulse is destabilizing our shields, affecting our power core. The bridge lights flickered ominously. Somewhere, deep within the fractured space, something was stirring. Far from the front lines in the fractured dimension where the Dauntless and the Ghost Fleet originated, the Gravemind stirred. It was not a being of flesh or metal, but a vast, sentient intelligence. An ancient entity born of the warped space-time that humanity's forbidden technology had unleashed. The Gravemind's consciousness stretched across dimensions like tendrils of dark energy, seeking freedom. It had been trapped, confined in containment vessels, the Ghost Fleet, humanity's prison ships designed to cage this terror. But now, the prison was cracking. The Gravemind pulsed, its voice a chorus of whispers in the void. They dared to rewrite the equation. And now the universe unravels. Back aboard the Vigilant, Rin's mind raced. What exactly is the Gravemind? He asked Dr. Liara Voss, who was monitoring the energy readings. Liara's eyes were wide with dread. It's a collective intelligence born from the chaos of space-time manipulation. It feeds on energy and entropy, consuming reality to grow. Humans tried to bind it with their technology, the equation, but it's breaking free. Captain Myra's face was grim. If it escapes, it could unravel entire star systems. We're looking at extinction on a cosmic scale. Rin swallowed. Hard. And the humans on the Dauntless, are they alive? Are they fighting it? Within the Dauntless's shifting corridors, Lieutenant Eric Thane and the scattered boarding team fought to stay alive. The ship's reality twisted around them, walls breathing, corridors folding back on themselves. Time warped, looping moments into endless echoes. Arik, I don't think the Gravemind is just an intelligence, whispered Sergeant Kella, her voice shaking. It's a force. It's like the ship itself is alive with it. Auric nodded grimly. We need to find the core and shut it down before it spreads. They pushed deeper into the heart of the ship, where ancient human machinery hummed with unstable power. Data terminals flickered to life, revealing cryptic logs. Containment breached. Grave mine spreading. All personnel evacuate. Suddenly, the ship trembled violently. A wave of dark energy surged through the corridors, distorting reality in waves. Auric barely held on as gravity shifted wildly. Shadows writhed at the edges of his vision. Fragments of trapped souls caught in the grave mine's grasp. We have to move, he shouted. The grave mine is breaking free. Back on the Vigilant, the fleet's AI struggled to maintain formation as more ships flickered out of existence, consumed or trapped in spatial anomalies spawned by the grave mines. Spreading influence, Captain Myra turned to Rin. We can't hold them off much longer. What's our plan? Rin's jaw tightened. We fight smart. We target the source, the Dauntless. If we can sever the grave mine's connection to the material universe, we might contain it. Liara nodded. But it's a suicide mission. The energy required could tear the Dauntless apart. Rin looked at his crew. Then we make it count. In the fractured dimension, the Dauntless's core glowed with unstable energy. Auric's team scrambled toward it, fighting hallucinations and shifting reality. The grave mind whispered promises and threats, testing their will. At the core, ancient consoles hummed with the equation's power, strings of rewritten physics, looping and unraveling. Auric, I'm linking into the core, Kella said, fingers flying over an alien interface. I'm trying to inject a shutdown sequence, but the grave mind is resisting. Suddenly, the grave mind's presence surged, an overwhelming wave of dark energy that shattered the controls. The ship convulsed violently, and for a moment, Auric feared the entire universe would tear apart. Back in the Vigilance bridge, alarms screamed. The grave mine's tendrils rippled into the fleet's command systems. Divert all power to weapons and shields, Myra ordered. Prepare for a final assault on the Dauntless's location. Rin stared at the swirling void outside, the viewport. Humanity's ghost was no longer a warning. It was the spark that ignited a cosmic battle. We were never meant to build ships like this, he murmured. But now we have to. As the grave mine's influence grew, the conquered fleet braced for a desperate fight to contain the darkness. A fight not just for survival, but for the very fabric of reality itself. The galaxy held its breath. The Vigilant trembled beneath the relentless assault of the grave mine's dark energy. Systems flickered, consoles sparking as tendrils of twisted spacetime curled through the corridors. Commander Rin Vallis gritted his teeth, struggling to keep control. Shields failing on Deck 7, Lieutenant Hara shouted. Energy fluctuations increasing exponentially. Captain Myra Zhen stood rigid, her voice calm but fierce. Divert all available power to stabilize the core. We cannot afford to lose this ship, not now. Around them, the fleet fought a losing battle, ghostly ships vanishing as the grave mine tore at the boundaries between dimensions. In the fractured heart of the Dauntless, Lieutenant Eric Thanes' team pushed forward through corridors that seemed to shift with every breath. Walls flickered between solid and transparent, revealing glimpses of impossible realities beyond. Stay focused, Auric ordered. We're close to the core. If we can shut it down, we stop the gravemind. Sergeant Kella's fingers danced over the alien interface. I'm initiating the shutdown sequence now. The equation's unraveling, but it's fighting back. Hard. A low hum filled the chamber as the ship itself seemed to resist. Energy, crackling and surging like a storm. Suddenly, a pulse of dark energy burst from the core, throwing the team back. Auric scrambled to his feet, eyes burning with determination. We're running out of time, he gasped. The grave mine's going to break free completely. A chilling whisper echoed in the chamber, a voice without form or face. You cannot stop the inevitable. Auric tightened his grip on his weapon, ignoring the growing pressure crushing at his mind. We have to try. Back on the Vigilant, Dr. Liara Voss analyzed the worsening data. The grave mine's influence wasn't just tearing space apart, it was warping time, folding moments into loops. Commander, she said urgently, The longer it remains connected, the more reality fractures. We're facing temporal collapse. Rin's gaze hardened. Then we cut it off at the source, no matter the cost. Captain Myra nodded. Prepare the quantum destabilizer. If we can overload the Dauntless's core while the shutdown sequence runs, we might sever the Gravemind's hold. As the Vigilant readied the weapon, Eric's team battled the last defenses within the core chamber. Shadows writhed at the edges of vision. Fragments of lost crew trapped in eternal torment. Kella, how much longer? Arik demanded. Almost there. A final surge of resistance pulsed through the ship, rattling the chamber violently. Arik steadied himself, feeling the weight of every soul aboard. Now, Kella shouted. She triggered the shutdown sequence. The core's glow dimmed as the equation began unraveling, the fabric of space-time stitching itself back together. Simultaneously, the Vigilant unleashed the quantum destabilizer, a beam of pure energy ripping through the fractured dimension. The Dauntless screamed as reality folded and snapped. In the final moments, Arik felt a strange calm. The ship's corridors began to stabilize, walls solidifying, gravity returning. The Gravemind's whispers faded into silence. Back on the Vigilant, the void outside cleared, stars returning to their rightful places. Captain Myra exhaled slowly. Is it over? Rin nodded, though exhaustion weighed heavily on him. For now. The galaxy had been saved, but the scars ran deep. Humanity's legacy was one of power and peril. They had built ships never meant to exist, and in doing so, awakened a darkness that nearly consumed them all. The Vigilant drifted in the stillness of space, the first real calm in what felt like an eternity. Outside the viewport, distant stars shimmered, untouched, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Commander Rin Vallis sat alone in his quarters, staring at the swirling holomap of the shattered rift where the Dauntless had been trapped. The battle was over, but the cost was etched into his mind. We fought shadows and won, but at what price? He muttered, rubbing his temples. The bridge was quiet as Captain Myra Jen and Dr. Liara Voss reviewed the damage reports. The quantum destabilizer had succeeded, severing the Gravemind's hold and collapsing the fractured space, but many ships were lost. Several systems near the rift had suffered catastrophic temporal distortions. Entire colonies vanished or frozen in time. This victory is hollow, Liara said softly. The Gravemind may be contained, but its wounds on space-time will take centuries to heal. And the humans? She hesitated. They were right to fear the power they unleashed. Myra nodded grimly. We owe them more than suspicion. Their legacy isn't just destruction, it's a warning. Far from the Concord fleet, the Dauntless's survivors regrouped. Lieutenant Eric Thane, battered but alive, stood before the remnants of his team. We stopped the Gravemind, Eric said quietly, voice thick with exhaustion. But the equation, it's still out there, unstable, dangerous. One of the engineers, a human woman named Dr. Mara Keene, approached. We need to dismantle this technology before anyone else tries to use it. Arik nodded. Agreed. Humanity's future depends on understanding its past and knowing when to let go. Back aboard the Vigilant, political ripples surged through the Galactic Concord. News of humanity's survival and the Gravemind's near escape sparked heated debates. The matriarch of the Vritel spoke in the council chamber. Humanity has returned from the ashes, not as conquerors, but as a species burdened by their own history. We must offer them a place at the table, not a target. Opposition. Voices called for quarantine and disarmament. Old fears clashed with the desperate need for unity. Rin and Myra watched the debates from the sidelines, knowing the fragile peace depended on trust born from shared survival. In a quiet moment, Rin found himself back at the observation deck, the stars stretching infinitely. We were never meant to build ships like that, he whispered again, the phrase haunting him. Myra joined him silently. Maybe not, but we were meant to survive and to learn. He looked at her, hope flickering despite the shadows. Elsewhere, deep in hidden facilities on Earth, fragments of the equation's technology were secured under heavy guard. Scientists debated the future, whether to destroy the secrets or attempt controlled study. Dr. Mara Keene, now a liaison to the Conquered, stood before a team of researchers. "We hold the key to incredible power," she said, voice steady, "but also to unimaginable destruction. It's our responsibility to ensure humanity never repeats these mistakes." The galaxy had glimpsed the edge of oblivion and survived. But the echoes of the grave mind and the shattered equation lingered, a solemn reminder. Some technologies are not meant for any one species. Some powers come with costs too high to pay, and humanity's journey was far from over. The stars beyond the Vigilant shimmered with renewed light, a galaxy, once threatened by collapse, now cautiously breathing again. Commander Rin Vallis stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the cosmos he had fought to protect. The battle against the Gravemind had scarred space and time, but it had also revealed the resilience buried deep in humanity and across the Conquered. Captain Myra Zhen joined him, her presence calm, yet resolute. "We've survived the impossible," she said quietly. "But survival is just the beginning." Rin nodded. The equation changed everything. It was a legacy of power and peril, a warning from a past we barely understand. In the weeks following the Gravemind's defeat, the Galactic Concord convened an emergency summit. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to forge a new alliance, one based not on fear or suspicion, but cooperation and shared stewardship of technology. The matriarch of the Vritel addressed the assembly. "The events we witnessed remind us that knowledge without wisdom is a weapon. Humanity's return offers a chance for redemption and unity." Among the human delegation, Dr. Mara Keene spoke with quiet strength. "We must confront our past openly. Our mistakes taught us that some power must be handled with care. Together, we will ensure it never threatens the galaxy again." Back on Earth, the remnants of human civilization emerged from shadow. Cities rebuilt, cultures renewed, and a new generation grew up with the weight of history and hope intertwined. Arik Thane, now part of an interspecies exploratory task force, reflected on the journey. "We reached the edge of destruction and saw what lies beyond. It changed us, not just as soldiers, but as guardians of a fragile future. The Dauntless was restored as a symbol, a vessel of memory and warning, moored in a museum orbiting Earth. Its shattered corridors became a place for learning, where visitors from across the stars came to understand the cost of unchecked ambition. Inside, a plaque bore the words that had echoed through so many halls. "We were never meant to build ships like this." But beneath it, a second line offered hope. "Yet we were meant to endure, to rise, and to choose a better path." In the quiet corners of the galaxy, whispers of humanity's story spread. Tales of a species who had faced annihilation, who had built impossible ships and unleashed forces beyond reckoning, and who had emerged humbled and wiser. The Gravemind was gone, contained in the echoes of space-time, but its shadow lingered as a solemn reminder. Commander Rin and Captain Myra stood once more on the Vigilance Bridge, watching as new ships charted courses for uncharted systems. The future was uncertain, but the stars beckoned. "We face challenges ahead," Myra said softly. "But now we do it together." Rin smiled faintly. "We were never meant to build ships like that, but maybe we were meant to build alliances." Their eyes met, and between them, the silent promise of a new dawn. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and filled with unknowns. But humanity, and the Conquered, had learned that survival was not just about power or fear. It was about hope.